What would you do if 500 strangers laughed at you on the most important day of your life? She didn't cry. She didn't walk away. She did something that changed every single person in that room. Her name was Leyla Hassan. And this is the story of the day she walked across a stage, and stopped an entire world in its tracks. It was a warm June morning. The kind of morning that smells like new beginnings. Outside Jefferson University's grand auditorium, families gathered with flowers and cameras and tears already forming at the corners of their eyes. Inside, nearly 500 people filled every seat. Parents. Professors. Trustees. Friends. Leyla stood in line backstage with the other graduates. She adjusted her cream hijab carefully over her navy blue gown. Her hands were trembling slightly, not from fear, but from something deeper. Something she had been carrying for 4 years. Because for Leyla Hassan, this graduation was not just a ceremony. It was the end of a war no one else could see. Leyla had arrived at Jefferson University 4 years earlier from a small apartment in Dearborn, Michigan. She was the first in her family to attend university. Her mother, Fatima, had worked double shifts at a textile factory for 11 years to make this possible. From the very first week, Leyla felt the weight of being different. In study groups, chairs were subtly pulled away from her. In the cafeteria, conversation stopped when she approached. A professor once asked her, in front of the entire class, whether she was comfortable expressing her own opinions freely, as if her hijab were a cage rather than a choice. But Leyla studied. She studied when she was exhausted. She studied when she was lonely. She studied when she sat alone in the library on Friday nights while others laughed in the courtyard below her window. By her junior year, she had the highest GPA in her department. By her senior year, 3 professors had nominated her for the university's highest academic honor. She had earned every single thing she was about to receive on that stage. And she had earned it while carrying a weight that none of her classmates could imagine. The morning of graduation, Leyla woke before far. She made wudu in the small bathroom of her apartment, the cold water grounding her. She prayed 2 rakats, slowly, deliberately, her forehead pressed against the prayer rug her grandmother had sent from back home. She whispered, "Ya Allah. You know what today means. You know what it cost. Please be with me on that stage." Fatima was already awake in the kitchen, pressing Leyla's academic gown with a travel iron she had borrowed from the neighbor. She had stayed up until 2 in the morning making Leyla's favorite breakfast, scrambled eggs with za'atar and warm bread. "You look like a queen," Fatima said when Leyla emerged from her room. Leyla smiled. "I look like a graduate." "Same thing," her mother said, eyes glistening. They drove to campus in silence, the kind of silence that doesn't need words. Fatima held Leyla's hand at every red light. And Leyla, for the first time in 4 years, felt completely unafraid. The ceremony had been running smoothly for 40 minutes when Leyla's name was called. Leyla Hassan. She rose from her seat, adjusted her hijab one final time, and began the long walk toward the stage. That's when it started. A low snicker from the left side of the auditorium. Then another. Then a cluster of laughter that rippled through a section of graduates like a wave. Someone whispered something. More laughter followed. Leyla heard it all. She kept walking. Dean Calloway stood at the podium, 58 years old, silver-haired, in his black academic robes. He watched the disruption with a tight expression, not stopping it, not addressing it. Simply watching. Leyla reached the steps of the stage. She climbed them one by one. The laughter had not fully stopped. A girl near the front said something to her friend behind her hand. Another group exchanged glances and smirked. And then Leyla reached the center of that stage. She stood in the spotlight. And she stopped. 500 people. And suddenly, not one sound. Leyla had stopped at the center of the stage. But she had not frozen. She was not panicking. She was not searching for an exit. She was praying. Standing upright, in front of everyone, her eyes closed for exactly 3 seconds. Her lips moved almost imperceptibly. Those closest to the stage would later say they saw her shoulders drop, not in defeat, but in release. As if she had just set down something extraordinarily heavy. In the audience, Fatima gripped the armrest of her chair. Her knuckles whitened. She whispered something under her breath, a prayer of her own. Then Leyla opened her eyes. And she smiled. Not a nervous smile. Not a performance. A real, full, unhurried smile, the kind that comes from somewhere so deep it cannot be manufactured. She turned to face the audience directly. All 500 of them. The laughers. The witnesses. The silent ones. And she spoke. Her voice did not shake. She said, "I want to thank everyone who laughed just now. Because 4 years ago, I almost didn't come here. I almost believed that a girl who looked like me, who covered her hair, who prayed 5 times a day, didn't belong in a place like this. Your laughter today reminded me of every moment I doubted myself. And I want you to know, every single one of those moments made me study harder." The auditorium was completely still. She continued, "My mother worked 11 years in a factory so I could stand on this stage. She didn't sleep. She didn't complain. She just believed. And the only thing I could give her in return was this diploma and this moment. So I am going to receive it with my head up. Because that is what she taught me. That is what my faith taught me. You do not shrink yourself to fit into spaces that were not built for you. You expand, until the space has no choice but to make room." Someone in the audience began to clap. Then another. Then the sound became a wave, rolling from the back of the auditorium forward, unstoppable, growing louder with every second. Dean Calloway, standing at the podium, began clapping too. Slowly at first. Then with both hands raised. The girl who had whispered behind her hand was now wiping her eyes. And Fatima was on her feet. Backstage, after the ceremony, Leyla sat alone on a folding chair in the corridor. Her gown was still on. Her diploma rested across her knees. She was breathing slowly, the long, deep breaths of someone releasing 4 years of pressure in a single exhale. A hand touched her shoulder. She looked up. It was a girl she had never spoken to, a classmate named Sarah, blonde, from one of the study groups that had never quite included her. Sarah's eyes were red. "I was one of them," Sarah said quietly. "I laughed. I didn't think, I just followed everyone else. And I'm so sorry. What you said up there, I've never heard anything like it." Leyla looked at her for a long moment. "I know," she said gently. "It's okay. Honestly, I needed to hear that laughter. It reminded me exactly why I was there." Sarah wiped her eyes. "Can I ask you something? What were you doing when you stopped up there? When you closed your eyes?" Leyla smiled. "I was asking for help from the only one who never laughed at me." Sarah was quiet for a long time. "That's beautiful," she finally said. "It's called tawakkul," Leyla said. "Trust in Allah. It means you hand the weight over, and you walk forward light." Sarah nodded slowly. And then she said something Leyla would remember for the rest of her life, "I want to understand that. I really do." When Leyla finally walked out of the auditorium into the afternoon sun, Fatima was waiting. She didn't say anything at first. She simply opened her arms. And Leyla, who had held herself together on that stage, who had spoken without her voice breaking, who had smiled through the laughter and the spotlight and the silence, finally let go. She buried her face in her mother's shoulder and wept. Not from pain. From something that has no single word in English, the relief of being completely known by someone who loves you completely. Fatima held her daughter and rocked her gently, the way she had when Layla was small and the world felt too large. "You were magnificent," Fatima whispered into her hair. "Your father would have stood up before anyone." Layla pulled back and looked at her mother's face, the fine lines, the tired eyes, the hands roughened by 11 years of factory work. "This diploma is yours, Mama," she said. "I just carried it across the stage." Fatima cupped her daughter's face in both hands. "No," she said firmly. "It is Allah's. We are just the vessels." Around them, other graduates took photographs and laughed and celebrated. But in that small circle of two, mother and daughter, in an afternoon that smelled of cut grass and summer, the whole world felt perfectly, completely still. None of them knew it yet, but someone in the auditorium had been recording. By midnight that same day, the video had been viewed 40,000 times. By the following morning, it had crossed 2 million. By the end of that week, 17 million. Comments poured in from everywhere. From Texas and Toronto. From London and Lagos. From Sydney and Riyadh. A retired teacher in Ohio wrote, "I have been in education for 35 years. This young woman taught me something I should have understood decades ago." A man in Manchester wrote simply, "I am not Muslim. I watched this 3 times. I cried all 3 times." A woman in Melbourne wrote, "My granddaughter starts university next year. I am sending her this video so she knows what dignity looks like." But perhaps the most remarkable message came from a woman who identified herself only as a former student at Jefferson University. She wrote, "I was in that auditorium. I was one of the ones who laughed. I don't know how to explain what happened when she smiled. It was like, something shifted. Like the air changed. I have been thinking about that smile for days. I need to understand where that kind of peace comes from." Layla read every single comment. And then she did something that surprised everyone who had expected her to be angry. She responded to that last message with 4 words, "It comes from Allah." Leyla Hassan graduated with a 3.97 GPA. She received the Jefferson University Academic Excellence Award, the first hijab-wearing student in the university's 140-year history to do so. She went on to pursue a graduate degree in public health. Her thesis is on healthcare access for Muslim communities in North America. But none of that is what people remember when they hear her name. What they remember is a girl who stopped on a stage. Who closed her eyes for 3 seconds. Who handed her fear to Allah and walked forward light. There is a verse in the Quran, and Layla has it written on a small card that she keeps in her wallet, has kept it there since her first week at university, and whoever relies upon Allah, then He is sufficient for him. Indeed, Allah will accomplish His purpose. Surah At-Talaq, 65:3. She didn't need the auditorium to be silent. She didn't need the laughter to stop. She didn't need Dean Calloway to intervene. She needed only one thing, and she had carried it with her every single day for 4 years, through every empty chair pulled away and every whispered comment and every lonely Friday night in the library. Her faith. And on that stage, in front of 500 people, it was enough. It was more than enough. If this story moved you, share it with someone who needs to be reminded that their faith is their greatest strength. And if you are carrying something heavy today, close your eyes for 3 seconds. Hand it over. And walk forward light. Alhamdulillah.